Are you an artist that's tried every way you can think of to connect with your audience? Well, Gem Nation is a new tool created for fans and artists to connect like never before. Once someone proves they're a true fan by streaming your song a set number of times, they gain access to your artist space, where they can get first or exclusive access to things like tickets, merch, or whatever else you want to give them. Download the app today and claim your artist space. That's JAMM Nation. Supercharge your fan engagement today with Gem Nation.
Let's go.
Come on down, Chad Mauldin, record producer extraordinaire. I mean, everybody it just loves your work and what you do. And we've talked about having you on the podcast for so long, but of course, Chad is a record producer at this point, and you do so many things. You've mastered so many instruments. Tell me the journey, just briefly. I know you started in music young, and now here you are producing so many people and putting out such good work. How did your path lead to this point?
So I had sort of a wild, just a crazy path like everybody does, I suppose. You wouldn't be able to predict it. But yeah, I was into music from just the time when I was a little kid. My dad plays guitar, he's a bluegrasser. And so I grew up, sort of just hearing people jamming in the living room as I would go to sleep as a kid, and so I just grew up around it. And my dad taught me the cowboy chords when I was little, and I would learn to sit around and play these songs, these old standards and stuff. And got to say junior high and started wanting to play in rock bands. So started, figuring out how to make my guitar sound like, rock bands on the radio and all that kind of stuff. And just played in bands and stuff like that all the way through high school and then college, even into my, say 20s, but probably starting around like the high school rock band I had. We went in and made an EP in a local recording studio. And when I got there, I was like, oh, this is where all the cool kids hang out, even though it's not, geeks like me hang out in the studio. But to me,
Right.
that was cool, right? Because I was just
Mhm.
enamored with the environment. And
That's it.
and the guy who ran the studio was really nice and sort of took a liking to me and would call me in and let me hang out and observe. And so I started getting into recording. At that time, home recording equipment was pretty, you know, it wasn't very sophisticated like it is now. It's pretty amazing what you can do at home these days with home recording equipment. But I got the kinds of things you would get back then, like a 4-track cassette recorder and things like that, and just started trying to figure it out. And then I'd say I got married early. I got married at 20, and my wife's brother was a recording engineer in Nashville, and he
Mm.
was a great resource for me. Had done some big records, had platinum albums and all kinds of cool stuff. And so I learned a lot from him. And recording technology was getting a little bit more accessible, to novices and hobbyists like myself at the time. And so I got better stuff, that was available, and started trying to learn how to do this thing, and just kind of did it at a hobbyist level, in my early 20s, but still playing in bands, like a lot of
Right.
people do. People are into playing in bands and they're guitarists, and they kind of play around at home working on recording and stuff. That's what I was doing.
Mhm.
And then I'd say I had a couple little times in my life where I was like, okay, I'm done with music. I have to like make a living now. These critical moments that you have in your life. Any kind of artist does. If you're in the arts, if you're creative, you have these crisis moments in your life where you're like, I've got to just go get some job somewhere. And so I had one of these moments. I decided to go to school, and I actually really spent a lot of time in school and got interested in studying and doing research and so forth like that. But when this is where the story gets a little weird. This may be more of an answer than you were bargaining
Oh, no,
for.
I love this. I love this. I love it.
uh, we moved to like a boarding school, right? Sorry, we moved to a boarding school because we were like house parents, and while we were there, because we were house parents, the kids, when they would go to school, I could do stuff like go to school or whatever.
Mhm.
And but I hadn't been there 8 months, and the guy who ran the place found out that I had a history in music and recording, and he was very interested in that because his son was starting to play guitar and ended up becoming an amazing musician. But they decided to put in like a full blown commercial recording studio on campus at this boarding school, and the proceeds would, give scholarships to kids and stuff like that, but basically just turn me loose to run this studio, which I had no business doing because I did not know what I was doing at that time, even at that point. But we were there for like 10 years, and I learned how
Oh,
to make
wow.
records. And that in that 10 years, that's when I cut my teeth and started making records. Eventually, at a certain point, started making records that I thought sounded good, that I was happy for people to hear. And we moved back to East Texas, picked it back up here. That's when I really started getting into the Texas music scene,
Hmm.
proper, and started getting in with some of those artists and people in and among and involved in that industry, and worked at a great studio south of Tyler. And then we've been at this really cool studio here in East Texas for about 7.5 years now. So here I am.
Yes, yes, and I'm so intrigued with your studio. Let's talk about your studio and how
Okay.
that came about and the history. It has such a
Okay.
history.
Yeah, it's really neat. It was really, I feel fortunate that we came across it. When we left that studio south of Tyler, we knew we wanted to have a place that we had a little more autonomy, because that studio was inside of a venue and they had events, and kind of our deal for me being there was I could operate out of there, but then I kind of had to help them with their events,
Mhm,
which was a bummer for me because I had to, I couldn't really get out on the weekends and meet artists and stuff because I was trying to, build my resume back then. That would have been, 10 years ago or so. And so we knew we needed a place where we had a little more autonomy. So someone just mentioned there's this place in Gladewater, Texas. It's a studio built in the 50s, and all the rockabilly guys were through there. And I was like, well, let's go look at it. And it's amazing. I kind of imagined like a rectangular cinder block room, like Sun Records, which Sun Records is amazing, but it's not amazing because the facility is amazing. It's amazing because Sam Phillips was a genius.
mhm.
There's nothing particularly special about the building. It was just this man was a great genius and did some wonderful things there. So I kind of imagined like an old Sun Records or something like that, but instead, what we discovered was it was an old radio studio built in 1950, and the acoustic design is amazing. Some acoustician from UT Austin did the design. Apparently, we don't know his name, but that's what we hear. And it's just unbelievable diffusion, birch panel acoustic design, and it's just a great facility. So basically, we were able to just come in, redo the infrastructure. We had to run all new wiring and everything, bring the equipment in, of course, and then but like the facility was set up for a studio, because those old radio studios were built the way that we conceive of recording studios being built now. You guys know
Mhm.
radio studios are just office suites. That's all you need to
Yeah.
for a radio studio. But back then they were having bands come in, full bands, and
Yes.
doing broadcasts live on the radio. So they need a live room, they need a booth for overdubs, they need a control room and office space and all these things that you would hope to see in a recording studio. So it was really great for us, and the clients love it. And Jerry Lee Lewis's autographs on the wall, the vocal booth, and there's
Wow,
all kinds of
nice.
folklore. Johnny Cash scuff marks is on the wall. Suppose Yeah, Johnny Cash wrote Walk the Line in Gladewater, Texas. Some people say it was here. Some people say it was at the Opry. There's some argument over where, but it was definitely in Gladewater. So that's kind of cool. And anyway, it's neat. The clients like it. We keep an apartment here on site for guest housing. And it's just, yeah, it's fun. It's a good place to work on records.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love the history of that. So, let's talk about some of your projects, some of your artists you've been working with. Who are some of your favorite artists, or maybe your first artist or first memories getting into the recording and
Yeah.
production?
Yeah. So probably for me, um, like I said, when we moved back to East Texas and started kind of setting up shop here, that was sort of when I really kind of started to tap into what was, going on in the Texas music scene. It's a long sort of ride to sort of, get through get over the no one knows who you are. You don't
Mhm.
have a very impressive resume, all these things, all these hurdles that you have to get over to start getting records that, that that help your career. And so I'm no different in that way. Everybody has to do that. And uh so really the only way to do that is to make records, and some of them do good.
Mhm.
When you started working with the artist, they were just getting started themselves, and then those records go on to do good and people like them, and then it just kind of goes from there. And so probably one of those first artists for me was an artist named Chris Colston. If you guys recall Chris Colston, he was he's really talented. He went on to he's still out there right now, but he toured a lot with Coetzel and all these people, and so that was I made an early record for him that really was, it was before he had really formed his identity as an artist. It was really like a truly kind of country record, but he became a little bit more of a country rock sort of figure. And so we made an album called Gone, and that record did very good. That EP did really good, particularly that song. So it was sort of led to him getting signed to Red 11, when there was a Red
Yes.
11.
Right.
But at the time, that was a big deal. And like I said, he was on the road with Co and all this stuff. And so that record was a good early record that I made that people liked and did well and sort of helped lead on to other things. Since then, uh, I've made several records for Ryan Wilcox and the Sunday Shakes. I love Ryan Wilcox so much. He's basically one of my favorite songwriters all time. And I started working with him on the Lovers and Thieves album. And then we've done 3 other studio albums since then, a couple live records, and just love those songs and love him. And Shay Abshire and the Night Howlers. We love Shay. We've made 2 records for Shay. We did his Turning Point record, and the new album that hasn't come out yet, but I think the first single should be out Friday. And so it's exciting to see some new music come out for Shay. Brandon Ryder, sort of our one
Love
of the
him.
Texas
Yes.
favorites.
Yes.
Uh, I made Brandon's last project, and I did his last project, and then we did a single not so long ago together. And I love Brandon. He's such a great guy, and it was an honor to work with Brandon. He's kind of Texas royalty, I suppose you might say.
I said yes, absolutely. I ditto that
Yeah.
for sure.
And then probably I'd say, well, I just did a live album for Slade Coulter, and he's very popular right now. And that was a fun record to make.
Hmm.
Dalton Domino reached out, his manager, and we coordinated that. That was great. And then probably, let's say, most recently, the album that has been performing very well and has been sort of helping sort of shine a light on what we do over here in little old Gladewater, Texas, is Colton Orr and the Clever Fuse latest record that came out early this year. It's done really well and performed great. I think Colton Moore is probably one of the great sort of how do you say it, inspirational stories for like how independent artists can really do it as an independent here in Texas. I mean, Colton, last time I looked, maybe 1.5 million monthly followers on Spotify as a completely independent artist, and
Mm.
tours a lot and just does really great business. And so I think that's a real inspiration to folks out there. And that record's done great for us, and it's done great for him, and we're excited to have done it. I'll tell you just one more thing, just off the top of my head, and everybody that we worked with this year we're so proud of. But there's a kid out of Austin named Connor Stevens who I just want to mention, a notable mention, who is on the come up, and it is he's from Austin. It's an amazing record. It's, I think, 4 singles into the album release, so the whole album's not out yet, but he's worth checking out to be sure. He's a great up and comer. And then lots of other folks, too many to mention, but we've had a lot of fun working with these great artists.
Have you ever wondered how artists like Treaty Oak Revival, Red Clay Strays, and Aaron Watson maintain the high quality and high demand for their merchandise? CH Lone Star Promo is the answer. Created in Texas to serve Texas artists, and they're currently offering 15% off on all merch orders from musicians. Visit chlonestarpromo.com to get started and tell them Texas Toast sent you.
I was reading the other day that it takes at least $1 million to break an artist. That's a ton of change, and it can feel overwhelming. But with social media leveling the playing field, you just need an effective strategy to release your music. Check out Release Rocket to ensure your single does not die after release day. You've already put time, effort, and tons of money into writing and recording your album. Let the guys at Release Rocket keep your new release alive.
So as a producer, and I know that April's worked in education. To me, it's like I feel like I see a lot of your social media where you're like giving tips and just I guess a good resource. You're a good resource with
Mm.
the knowledge that you put out. So
Yeah.
when the artists come in to record, do you feel like in your position that with leadership and in education is a part of it?
Yeah, I have that sort of educate. I was raised by a teacher. You know, my mom's a
Uh-huh.
teacher. My
I can
wife,
see
as you
it in
mentioned,
you.
April,
Yes, yes.
was a
Hmm.
teacher. She still works in education, but from the business side of things, she flies around and works for a technology company now. But yeah, that bugs in me, you know. So I love to
Hmm.
teach. Sometimes artists will kind of be looking over my shoulder. What are you doing? What are you doing? And sometimes they'll apologize and they'll say, "I know I'm bugging you." I'm like, "You're actually not. I actually really like." I don't know. You know, it's kind of like this job is a kind of a lonely. It's not lonely because you get to be around people, but you know, it's lonely in the sense that nobody really gets what you're doing. It's kind of like black magic. You know, it's just this mysterious thing, and
Yes.
but it's not. You know, it's just a skill set like any other thing that you do. You know, you do it for a while and you get good at it. You know, and people have certain talents and so on, and so I like to sort of demystify some of these things. You know, and talk about what it is. Well, we're doing this because of that, and we'd like to use this. And I know it seems weird that I'm having you play the same thing twice, but you know, we're going to do this. We're going to put one in the left speaker and one in the right speaker, and blah blah blah. I like to explain these things as I go along because I like people to get that we're doing something cool. You know, people
Yes.
have the misconception sometimes that making a record is just say it's a 4-piece band, 4 guys get in a room, you hit record, and 5 minutes later they have their new single. But it's so much more than that. I mean, it
Yes, it
could be,
is.
but those records that you hear on the radio that sound amazing and sort of become the soundtrack of your youth and your life and so on,
Hmm.
a lot's going on under the hood. And I like to show people that. I like for people to see that, you know, all this crazy stuff that we do to make these records.
Yes. Under the hood. I like that. So let's talk about how's the family, and I was kind of, I mean, tell April I said hello.
I
We always
will.
have such a good time when we all get together and we get to visit.
She's
And
the
so
best.
how's your summer been with the family?
Great. One good thing about the life of a producer is you generally have the weekends off because all your clients are on the road.
Right.
So we have a pool at the house, and everybody's invited every weekend to just come get in the pool and drink beer or whatever they want to do and visit. We do that a lot. We get out to shows, and this summer's is turning out to be really fun. We'll try to, you know, one of the perks of my wife's job, she travels so much, is we get a lot
Mhm.
of flyer miles and hotel points, and so we can do fun things like we went to Atlanta to see a client that was on tour. It seems extravagant to go all the way to Atlanta, but like we went for no money. You know, it was like so it
Cool.
really wasn't that big a deal. We're going to go see Red Rocks. We have a client that's opening a show for a co at Red Rocks. Again, it seems a little extravagant to go all the way there, you know, but you know, her job has perks, and so we're taking advantage of it. So the summer's shaping up to be quite nice and a lot of fun and so on.
Yes, and then before we know it, it'll be November, and you know what that means. The Texas
Yeah,
Country Music Awards, and you know, you have been like directing those awards since the inception.
it's true. It was sort of informal the first year, and how long has it been now? Like 8 years, or maybe longer. 9. We've done 9 of these things. We're
Wow.
getting on to a decade of it, I think. And if Linda watches this later, she'll scold me for not knowing exactly. But it's been a while, and the first one sort of came together quick, and it was in Carthage at the Civic Center there, and she was just, you know, she didn't have a team around her at the time. It was really an
Mhm.
early iteration of the awards, and like any of those things when they start, you know, they're kind of thrown together, and things could be better, and this and that and the other. But we pulled it off, and and so on, and every year it's gotten a lot better. And we've been at Billy Bob's for I guess 4 or 5 years now. This will be the
Mhm.
maybe the 5th year. And since we've been there, it's just been great. The folks involved with Stockyards are a big sponsor, and they kind of make a weekend out of it. We have bands playing all over the Stockyards that weekend, and song swaps and concerts and pre-show concerts, and then, of course, the award show at Billy Bob's. And we always have a great headliner. This year it's Jason Boland. You know, everybody loves Jason Boland. And a lot of good up and coming artists will be there and be able to perform and so forth. And a lot of great and well deserved awards will be given out. And it's a
Mhm.
whirlwind, and it's real busy. And you know, when people see me there, I'm running around like a crazy person, but it's always really satisfying at the end because every year it just gets leaner and meaner, and you know,
It
it's just
does.
a fun
Yes.
time. Fun time.
Yes. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I feel like I feel like I get to do one of the most fun duties being on the red carpet, and that's kind of like welcoming everybody to your house, like welcoming the
Yeah.
family, because it's
Yeah.
like a family reunion, and it's like I guess we're kind of first point of contact during the awards, and that's
Yeah.
such an honor for me to be able to do that along with Jim, who's always next to me. And anyway, but it's like I was thinking about it the other day, and it's like, yeah, come on in, family. Come on, go find your
Yeah.
seat, sit down for the show. It's always just so much fun.
It is, and what I tell people, because there's only so many, there's only a certain amount of people that can win, obviously, but it's really not that. That's really not the majority of it. The majority of it is getting in the room together with all these people that you rarely get to see, because
I
everybody
know.
in this industry is kind of working on the same schedule, which means they're generally not together, especially the artists and the bands. They're all on the road. And so unless they're playing a date together, they don't get to see each other. And so it's a nice time for everybody to get in the same room and meet up with old friends, meet new friends, and make new friends, I should say, and just sort of celebrate this awesome thing we have here in Texas. It's a really unique ecosystem for independent music. I don't know if there's anything like it right now. It's, when I was growing up, the Seattle scene was this vibrant thing. And then even when I was younger,
Mhm.
yeah, LA, the Sunset Strip was this really incredible, vibrant scene. And then in the 70s, New York City was this vibrant scene. And all those places still have a lot of music, but man, but those are all towns. Texas, it's like the whole thing,
I love it.
and
I love it.
it's really unique in that way. And so it's a fun time to be able to celebrate that. Yeah.
Very well said. And it's like I mean, I just preach it all the time when people will come to me and ask me something about the podcast, or they'll ask me something about what is this Texas music, and I'm like, gosh, you haven't figured it out yet. And then I get started and I can't stop talking about it. And
Yeah.
then the other thing, it's like when you were naming names and like the artists that are coming into your studio, it's like it's a constant education for me to be
Mhm.
researching
Yeah.
music and seeing
Yeah.
and getting an email or getting a text from someone, hey, can you check this out? And it's like, yes, most definitely. I'm
Yeah.
never going to ignore one of those. And it's like, gosh, it's just the abundance of talent and
Yeah.
preserving music and the history of our Texas country industry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. My middle son is a musician, a touring musician. He's a bass player, plays with Jacob Stelly, and
Yes.
also releases music too under the moniker Strange Help, which you guys covered when a single one time when it was released. But he's not a singer, so he gets guest singers, features to come on and sing, and
Mhm.
we release albums. The second one's about to come out probably end of the year. And so he's out there on the road and playing and stuff, and his fingers on the pulse pretty good. And so he helps me a lot. I try to stay really aware of what's going on, like you say, but he'll come to me and say, you should really check this person out, or you should look into this person. You should reach out to this person. He keeps me up to date too. So it's nice to have someone sort of curate some of that knowledge too, because you're right, there's a lot of it. And it's amazing, someone's name will cross your desk, you've never heard of them, and you check them out, they're amazing. And maybe they're not just amazing, maybe they have a big fan base, but there's just so much opportunity to do that, to build a fan base in Texas that maybe they just haven't hit your radar yet.
Uh-huh. That's so true. That's so true. So speaking of up and coming and artists and the job that you do, since this is kind of more of our industry bottoms up episode, any pointers you can give some of the artists that maybe are going into a professional studio for the first time, what they can expect and how to be prepared?
That's a great question, a question that I think needs to be asked more than it is. um, so yeah, I think probably it's just to get a good perspective on what you're doing. I like to say, you shouldn't, as an artist, you shouldn't be trying to find the best studio to work at, because there's lots of great studios, and they all have good equipment, they all have good mics. You might prefer some over the other, whatever, but they're all good. You can go to your bedroom and make a really decent recording. So that's not really the goal, I would argue. The goal is to find a producer that you can collaborate with, that gets what you're trying to do. And the only way you can figure that out is to have some conversations with candidates that you're sort of checking out to fill that role. And yes, of course, presumably they will have a studio or work out of a studio that is good and quality, and so the equipment will be good. That's fine. But the most important thing is to find someone as an artist you can collaborate with, a producer, so that, you guys can kind of get together, work on the songs, tighten them up, make them sort of get your game plan together, figure out what's the bullseye, what are we shooting for here, what are we trying to accomplish, and somebody that you can do pre-production with. You can't just walk in. You can, but the best records are made when you don't just simply walk into a recording studio and go, all right, we have a drummer, a bass player, and a guitar player, go. A little planning, a little thinking ahead, tightening up the songs, thinking of sonically what direction we want to go in, sort of preparing for those things in advance with the producer can be very helpful. So I would say just sort of calibrating your mind. Instead of thinking about picking a great studio, pick a great producer that you can work with, that gets you. That's really the secret, I think.
I love that. Okay. Well, anything else before we wrap it up that you want to make sure get a message out there for producing or recording that maybe I didn't touch on? I just love having you like in our hands right now and being able to pick your brain about things. I don't want to leave anything
Sure.
out.
No, well, I mean, yeah, just oh, I don't know. We could talk about a lot of stuff, but I just say, just an encouragement to the artist too. The music business is changing so much, but something that is the same. Whether you're releasing albums or EPs or singles, the same thing is true. You've got to create content and get it out there. Back in the day when album was king, physical albums were king. They were still, these bands that were gaining traction, they were still releasing at least an album every year. So that really hasn't changed at all. People go, oh, you have to create so much more content than used to. Not really. It's still something like an album's worth of content a year that you need to be creating, whether you release it as an album or a series of singles or, subsequent EPs or whatever the case. You've got to make music and release music. You have to do it. So I would just encourage artists to just get really serious about that. And yeah, so maybe your budget doesn't allow for full-blown like multiple studio albums every year. I mean, whose does? But you do need to do some of that. But also, it's okay to create what I call bonus content. Content that is much cheaper to create, like live songs or acoustic songs or something like that, to kind of sort of fill the gap, let's say. And so I would just that's all. Just as a producer to artists maybe that are watching this, my encouragement is to figure out a way to make content. There's no A&R guy going to show up at the show anymore and go, this guy's awesome, we're going to give him a big fat record deal and then you're going to be famous because you're awesome. You can't be awesome enough. You have to already be doing it. You've got to do it yourself. And then maybe when they come knocking, you won't want to sign the record deal because you're making enough money on your own, or maybe you will. I don't know. It's up to you at that point. But you've got to do it yourself. And the only way there's multiple things you have to do, but one of the main things is you got to make music and release it. And so that's my encouragement, I should say.
Wow, some of the best words that's ever been said and advice to artists on the podcast. So thank you so much, Chad Mauldin. And of course, Chad Mauldin, Mauldin Productions, KSIJ Studios. That's where everybody can kind of look that up and find you.
Yeah. I'm on all the social media stuff, Mauldin Productions, mauldinprod.com is my website. I have a playlist on Spotify called Mauldin Productions, very clever. And we put samples of songs that we're releasing for artists throughout the year on there. So there's a bunch of cool stuff. That's a great place to go and discover new artists because we work with new artists all the time. We love that. I have a Spotify playlist called Texas Mixtape. And that one is songs that I just like. We update it all the time. And some of those songs are artists I work with, but a lot of them aren't. They're just songs from people out there that are cool, that I think are cool. And so those are all places you can find out about me, I suppose.
I love it. Love to visit. And make sure you tell April I said hello.
I will.
And yes, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon for sure in November and somewhere in between, hopefully. So thank you so much, Chad, for coming on and giving us so many, such good words of wisdom.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.